The Connector Next Door is your invitation to meet the natural connectors all around us. They represent the everyday event planners who are energizing their communities every single day. Their stories are familiar, fun, and full of charm. Your host, Lisa Garrow, is a lifelong event planner and has been a connection strategy coach for over a decade. She knows events can become energized connecting points where communities can gather and grow. Let's listen in as she strikes up a conversation with today's Connector Next Door.
My longtime dear friend, Grace G., is a Chinese-Canadian who now resides in Louisville, Colorado. Grace has lived and worked in Canada and the US and Hong Kong and has traveled widely in Europe and Asia. It was over 25 years ago that we met in Calgary, working side by side at a postal plant conveyor belt, sorting holiday packages to their final destinations. We knew our time there would be short-lived, but our friendship endured. Grace is an artist. Her life and work as an artist have been deeply influenced by her bicultural upbringing, and she's strongly rooted in spiritual growth, healing, and transformation. And in that spirit, she creates art that challenges the mind and nourishes the spirit. As she explains in our conversation today, her art holds space for vulnerability to exist, and her upcoming installation is evidence of how deeply that is true for her. What a joy on this, my last episode of Season 1, to sit down with Grace and explore how art can awaken us to the value and importance of deep connection with each other. So welcome everyone back to the Connector Next Door, and I am thrilled that this has been an amazing Season 1. I started, would have been last July was when this all started birthing very organically, and I am just coming to the close of season number 1 with my dear friend Grace G. I'm so glad that you're here with me for episode 24, my favorite number, and the last episode of season 1. Welcome here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you for this.
We just hit record in the middle of conversation because we were chatting for like half an hour and just reminiscing about all the time that we have known each other and how we got to know each other and all the things that have happened in between. And it has been maybe my oldest daughter is 25. And so we met when I was just before I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, when we both were working the cull machines at the post office.
25 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So long ago. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the people out there for today. And we're going to talk a lot about your journey in the last even 10 years and what this has been for you to really create a community through connection, through your art. I'm so excited. Tell us a little bit about where you're at today.
Sure. Well, I'm living in Louisville, Colorado, and I'm a fine artist, mostly sculpture, books, like artist books and installation work. I do a lot of work with fiber and thread. Mostly personal narrative and healing is a big part of my work, and it's a big theme with my work. And so a lot of connection has to do with connecting with my work, with my art. So when people can relate, whether they can relate to the healing part of it or relate to maybe the painful part of it that's being expressed, and then connect with community and really ultimately, connect with themselves, right? So
right.
We live in a really grief adverse society. And I think that the result of that is that, the vast majority of people are not in touch with the feelings of pain and fear and grief that need to be healed to be whole. And so my work, even though the situation might be different, the emotions are similar. So people can connect through the emotional resonance of,
Mm-hmm.
what they're sensing in the work.
And I've known you as that type of person for as long as I have known you. I think that's why we connected so thoroughly when we did, because we connected on a very deep level, very quickly in difficult situations. We both were in different places at the time, and some cool things that were budding. But I really always have appreciated how you have just been able to lean into life and feel life and show up for life and the good stuff and the and the not so good stuff. We've both been there, but that you've always been able to show up really authentically. Is that something that you see in your work right now too? Are you able to express that through your artwork as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing that people do connect with, is that it's real. Like, part of the piece for me is about creating, like, being vulnerable through my work. Art is always vulnerable because there's so much of it is, what's the word? Self-portraits.
Okay. Yeah.
It's from real life. Well, mine is from real life. And so putting it out there is very vulnerable. But what that does is create this space for other people's vulnerability to show up. And it's okay. So this last exhibit, people would share their own stories. I mean, strangers in a gallery pouring their hearts out, and
exactly.
Meaningfully,
Tell me a little bit about that exhibit for those that haven't been following you. Tell us a little bit about what that exhibit was.
Yeah, it's called Brave Pathways, Creative Roads to Healing. And it had about 9, almost 10 years of work in there that just covered the span of accidents and near-death experiences and illnesses and divorce and death and just the whole sort of life, the roller coaster of life. And it was my processing of these events during while they were happening and afterwards, and just creatively expressing them. And so there are little coffins that are about what we're laying to rest, relational patterns that we're laying to rest. And there are artist urns. There's a lot of work about renewal, about finding about renewing what nature discards, right? And through that, renewing myself, right? Like, it's so easy to be discarded if you don't fit into a particular category. If you're past childbearing age, if you're divorced, do you know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to be discarded or to feel like society is ready to discard you. So it was metaphorically renewing myself as I stitched and renewed these dried seed pods, and that normally, their job is to hold these seeds and protect them. And once they open and their seeds are gone, they're debris, and we don't see them anymore, and we don't look at them in the same way. So it was sort of co-creating with nature and renewing ourselves.
Right. And as you were going through that, and I know that we were in touch back, through some of those periods of times where you were really fighting for your life, literally, and sitting with you, but also being surrounded by your art in your home and these things that meant so much to you. But I know, and I was feeling at the time, the art was a way of you not just expressing sort of these deeper feelings that you were going through, but part of it was just in motion that you were processing, like you were saying, you were processing what was happening and not necessarily thinking about the exhibit that's going to be happening in 2022. That probably was the furthest thing from your mind at the time, which I think adds so much value and power to the pieces that you have created, because you were born to create. That's my perception. And that you have always been in this place where, like a musician might, where they're writing lyrics to a song, or somebody that is expressing themselves however artistically. When you're in the middle of it, that it's an opportunity for us to almost shake it out, that there's something happening inside of us. And I am a firm believer that our bodies and spirits and who we are, if it's contained, we really lose the flow within us, where we're able to really find what else is there. Like when you talk about renewal in this, it isn't just about being in the moment. I think we need that to be able to sort of sit in a moment and own it and understand it, and as far as we can, but then allow something to be birthed from it, which is what I'm seeing in this must be the last year or so for you, where you've just started to embrace what this actually means to shake off some of these things, or like you said, maybe bury or put to rest some things that are not serving us anymore. When you were in a position to now put these things on display, what was that like for you? Because we talk a lot here on the podcast and through my candy work and with a lot of clients. Sometimes there is this feeling like I've created something here and it is so precious to me, and it has come through a lot of hard times or a lot of work or whatever it is. When we start revealing these things to the world and sharing them with the world and inviting people to interact or engage with them, that can be a little bit tough. Was that something for you, that maybe there was a processing of that, revealing it to the world, sharing it with the world?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I looked at that a lot during this exhibit, because it is so personal. It is my heart really exposed. And I did something, I showed up a lot at the gallery. So I would be there to talk to patrons. I would be there for a number of different, I put it out to my community that I'd be there if you want to come see it while I'm there and talk to me. And I did some personal tours. And, I am motivated to get beyond that fear, right? The feeling in my chest that's like, oh, somebody's going to know me more than maybe I want them to know me,
right?
Because they see my work. But it's okay, because it's not me. It's not you. It's universal, right? Like my pain is just my pain, but we all feel grief over loss. We all feel fear over, safety issues. So I tried to really see it not as individual and show up. And what happened was, as I was saying, people showed up, people shared themselves, people expressed how meaningful it was to feel heard, to feel like they could relate to something, not to feel heard so much, but I can relate to that. I understand that. Oh, I am not alone in this experience. And I think those connections are huge, right? Like, yeah, that changes the person. You walk away and you interact with other people in a different way when you feel a little bit more whole, right?
Yeah. What was really interesting, and this was before we hit record today, what was really interesting in the conversation we just had about the ease of opening it up. So as much as there might have been a process for you to now take something that was very intimate, very personal, and very real for you, opening this up to now a community to view, they're behind glass, that you're there, you're literally sharing your heart with the people that were engaging with that exhibit. But what we were chatting about was that when you were ready to do that, it almost was this ease of somebody opening the door for you and saying, how about this? Yeah. And how how the opening was coming when you were ready for that. Can you tell us a little bit about that partnership with the gallery owner and how that actually happened? Because there will be people listening to this and saying, well, maybe that's just where Grace was at, and she set herself up, and she already had partners ready, and you had this all set up. But I think there was this organic, very natural way that the world opened up to you at that point. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a city-owned gallery. I was invited to exhibit there in a time when things have been, I mean, you just have to look at the exhibit and you understand that there's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of strife and a lot of fighting for my life, fighting for advocating for other people, through a divorce, you're always, I mean, we'd like to think that it's not about fighting for, but it actually is fighting for. You have to speak for yourself and what you want. And in that time, to have this invitation and this woman who just made it very easy, it was such a gift. And I feel like it was the beginning of this flow for me. And time again, things are showing up easily. And I think that has to do with partly the work that I've done to get myself into this space, and partly, I've lived here for 11 years, so I am building my community and these connections. It's taken some time, given the context of all the ups and downs, that where your focus is really just on one foot in front of the other. So I think it is this piece that's happening now, and it's gathering momentum, and it's super exciting because people are showing up when I need, when I speak it and then somebody shows up, and if I'm talking about my projects, which is sometimes a little vulnerable, but again, it's this thing, like if I'm talking about it, then people are stepping up. But if I don't say anything, nothing happens.
Exactly.
That ease has just been beautiful and a real gift to me.
And I think for many of us, when we're willing to go there and take what comes, right? Like we don't really know what the result is going to be. And how much do we need to know before we say, yes, we're going to do this exhibit. We're going to put all my pieces from the last 9 years so people can see them. Not only is it vulnerable, but we also don't know the result. We don't know what people are going to say. We don't, we sometimes might second guess moving forward because we don't know. And having that ease of connection, the partnership that just, I'll say, naturally happened, probably also put you at ease when you were talking to people, because when we have, to use the cliche, wind beneath our wings, when we have people that are there and there are champions. And honestly, Grace, you have been that for me over these years. And I know in so many ways, I'm not going to get emotional, but in so many ways, it's like, wow, Grace believes in me, or Grace believes that this fight is worth it in my life. Yeah. How has that now shown up? Because I know you've got an amazing new project that is on the go, and tell us as much as you can, because I know this hasn't been revealed yet, but tell us a little bit about where that ease now, and as you talk about this new flow that you're feeling and enjoying now after all these years. What is the new project, and how are you finding that? Why is it the time to introduce something new?
Right. Well, it's actually very interesting because those 9 years, we're coming up to 10 years. And I do feel like I'm moving out of that phase. So it's almost contained. And then this new project I'm very excited about it. It is, and I'm happy to talk about it because I'm about to debut it in May, on May 7th. So
amazing.
It is all about community healing. It's healing racial divides and creating community. So I'm creating all these forms, these spherical forms that I'm going to invite the BIPOC community to come and write their stories of, discrimination, prejudice, harassment on. And the display is, I mean, that piece of it allows them to express what sometimes has never been said before, connect with other people who are having similar experiences, and creating community, right? Creating those connections. And then the people who are viewing it will also have an opportunity to write a response on paper that will go up. So like kind of this dialogue closed loop where here's the story, here's a response. There'll be pictures of the people who have written stories up as well. So if you see somebody you know their stories up on the wall somewhere, right?
How is it actually displayed? Like, how are people, will they walk through the spheres? Are they looking at the spheres? How is that tied together?
So I'm running 4 events for sure.
Okay.
And I think by the end of 4 events, I'm going to have 1,000 spheres, right? And these spheres are like, really, they're like the bubbles. They look like bubbles.
Okay.
They represent the bubbles that people who don't face this kind of discrimination sometimes live in, right? So they will be actually up on the wall. And how I envision it, depending on the space, it'll be an installation. So, but I envision, maybe on the ceiling, on the wall, across the wall, and dripping onto the floor, right? And so the stories are on the faces of the bubbles. You can see through them, and you can get right up to them and read them and get personal with them, or they'll be on the floor and you can read them on the floor. And so that's how I see it. And of course, a smaller space, there's a little annex, like a library annex, and it's just going to have a few around there, around the entry, so that, it's like, come see the main exhibit, but here's, 25 of them or 30 of them.
Right.
And if this is intriguing to you, come see the rest,
Yeah. So what is your connection then with the people that are writing the stories? Are you getting to know them at all? Are they simply writing them on and then you'll install them and you'll have photos?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll hold these events kind of like I held different community events. So I'm just going to jump around here. But
of course,
I did this flag writing event that was all about our relational red flags and green flags, stop and go.
Yeah.
And so I invited people to come and write out all their experiences. And what I found happened there, which is what I'm also anticipating will happen in this future event, is that people got together and they wrote their stories and they talked and they connected with each other, right? Like they remembered something, they wrote some more, they they found themselves in the stories, or they were like, oh, is that a red flag? Oh, shoot. I didn't even know, right? Or, oh, yeah, I want that for myself too. That would be a green flag, right? So this past exhibit, I actually sewed these, even though they were about, business relationships or family or whatever, I sewed them onto 2 wedding dresses, onto the trains of 2 wedding dresses. And I showed this at this exhibit, and it also had more flags for people to write. So if you came into the gallery and you were so inspired, you could write 2 or 10, flags. And I went in periodically and I sewed them on. So the thing about that was that people were engaged, right? They came in, they read the flags, they found themselves, and then they were like, it just jostled their brains and went, oh, I have something to say. I want to contribute to this. us, right? So I'm hoping that in the same way, people writing the stories on these forms, these spherical forms, are going to talk to each other and read things and then come back and, just connect with each other and create community in that way.
And I love,
of course, I'll be part of it, but it's really about that.
Well, exactly. And setting something free. I think that's the neat thing about both of those last ideas and the exhibits that you've described, is that you're setting the idea free in a way that people can actually now embark on their own journey and apply it to their own lives, or allow it to, for those of us that are living in the bubble and haven't experienced this, to have an experience of what that is through the multiple stories. It isn't just about one person's story. This is about the incredible, I'm sure, view of something coming from the ceiling. It's undeniable. You can't miss it, right?
Right.
And that there is, anytime you talk about spoken word, anytime you see words on a page or, on our feeds, we're compelled to read. We're compelled to, maybe it's our curiosity or whatever it is that draws us in. And so using words in that way, either to be healing or awakening, or somehow maybe it'll jolt us a little bit, but that's okay. That's what community is.
Yeah. And it calls non-BIPOC community to be allies. Step up. If you understand now what people are walking around with that is invisible to you, maybe you'll step up if you see something. Maybe you will act. Maybe you will be more aware of, oh, maybe I've said that and I didn't even realize that was offensive. Microaggressions are not widely understood, right? But if you read yourself on the wall, maybe you'll think before you speak, and maybe you'll have compassion for somebody who, you don't know what their experience is. What you said about it being undeniable, like one person, it's easy to dismiss, which is also a microaggression. Your experience is not, it's just your experience. It doesn't count somehow, but it will be undeniable. And for people who are writing their stories, it's an unburdening, and there's so much healing in unburdening. There's so much shame and embarrassment around some of these things that happen that they don't get spoken about. It's never seen the light of day.
When I think about the spheres that you're talking about, and that they are transparent, I think is the way that you're describing them. And then layering them on top of each other, or they're flowing together, you'll be seeing words in, through words. And when we see our communities and our worlds, and if we're truly listening, there's going to be more stories behind it. I think that visual as well is really powerful, because it's not just sort of a standalone, that they're all integrated together, that you're seeing the flow together. I don't know if you'll have some kind of illumination of this or something, but I can just imagine how it isn't just one thing. And when there's that blending of the stories, not only is it undeniable, but I think it really calls us to be more, to lean in more, to have more conversations, to be open. The friendship you and I have shared over all of these years, I know that there have been so many things that I've learned through our friendship, and just how humanity, when we really pay attention, and I think that's maybe the beauty of art as well, is that there's such, especially when you're talking about your seeds, and I'll try to post some of those, or at least a link to the post so people can see what those look like. But the intricacy of it, and the focus and the time it takes for each one of your pieces, whether it's a book, whether it's some kind of thread art, whether it's the felting, whatever it is, that it takes concentration and time. And if we were to look at the connections we're building with others with that same kind of focus, with the same kind of time, with the same kind of diligence to express something, say something, but also in the listening, in the paying attention and being present.
Witness somebody with that same intention.
Mm. It's a different space. So if people that are listening are not artists, what would that look like for someone to actually take the time to focus and pay attention, to lean in, as though this was the most important thing in this moment, when they're talking to somebody that has a story to tell?
I think that looks like being present, right? So it means putting away distractions and listening with intention, right? Listening to understand, not just listening to speak about what you're going to say next, or dutifully or whatever, all the different ways that we listen, right? But if we listen to understand somebody's experience, I think that is huge, right? That people feel that. I think you know when somebody's heard you. You know when somebody's half listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's palpable almost. And so I think that's what that is.
And to do that as a community, I think that's where it gets really exciting when we start to see, I was going to say the word power shift, but it's almost like having this, it's not about who's talking, it's not about who has the stage or who's in the spotlight, but that there is this dialogue that starts happening very organically. And what better place than in a studio or at a gallery or looking at an exhibit where you're almost, in many cases, shoulder. Now things are opening up here in Canada as well, so we might be shoulder to shoulder again, but we're having this collective experience in experiencing what the artist intended.
That's why I think being able to respond to it is so important. It's not just seeing the work and it's being able to say, this is my experience of your story, and then it's this full circle, right?
Right.
Yeah.
When you're moving from, so you shared a little bit about the fight and then this move to ease and flow, and I'm sure it's not always easy, but having this ease and flow, what is most exciting for you when you look at the next year to come?
Well, I think, when you don't know what is coming, everything is possible.
Oh, I love
it. And so that's exciting. Where there's been a lot of time where I think it might have been a little bit predictable what was going to be in this following year. It's really exciting to be on this edge where anything can happen. This project, I think, is going to go all kinds of places, because I think any of the isms, any of the ways that people are marginalized, the project's being taken in there and expanded to open up experiences to other people. Ageism, sexism, there's unfortunately no end to the ways that people are marginalized.
Right.
And that's healing. So to take that into different communities, I think would be fantastic. I would be so excited to do that. And I have a teenager, so my thought is, what's it like to be a teenager after the last couple of years, just in this day and age? So if teenagers got to say what it was like, people who read that and understood that, maybe we'd have a little bit more compassion,
Yeah.
I'm witnessing it. It is tough to be a teenager. I mean, I remember how tough it was, but it's not any easier.
Agreed. And what's amazing about what you're suggesting as well is that we see everyone has a voice online right now, and especially our young people. And my daughters are adults now, and they are very savvy online, and and quite strong and opinionated too. You know, they've got their power and they know how to use it, which is amazing. And you knew them from when they were little babies.
Yeah.
But having this, it's one thing to have a voice online. It's one thing to say what you want to say online. It's something completely different, I think, to have a dialogue in the context of community when you're seeing somebody eye to eye, when there is a story told and there's a response. That to me that just gives me chills, because I feel like that to me is what life is made of. And that's what love and relationship and health and healing is made of, is when we start to see each other and respond to each other meaningfully. What you've created, like I said, is that it feels like that platform that can be at least a catalyst to something more. We'll not stop, whatever's going on online, and we won't stop that engine from running, but we can start to apply more, I think, more connection opportunities for people to really to feel connected and to grow those connections. Like I love how you said the sky's the limit, right? Like this is an open door. We don't know what the future is going to bring. So that would breed that excitement in us, that we can lean in ourselves, whatever it is for us, where we can add the dialogue, the conversation, the connections with people that will start to birth something new, a different conversation, a deeper conversation. That's so right. Valuable.
Yeah. And that's what I want out of this, is for more conversations, for any conversations, right? Because research shows that if you talk about race and you talk about social injustice, that actually can have a lasting positive change on children's perceptions of the world and their development and how they interact, right? Those biases that will just be passed on generationally get interrupted. So, to have this work, there is a place where it's committed right now in a library space, to have this work be in spaces like that, where it serves the underserved population. It serves old and new, to have this work there and to start conversations. I think that's healing, right? And that's connecting them with themselves, with their heritage, with their community, do you know what I mean? All of those pieces. It's so exciting for me, to be honest.
Totally.
It comes from like not having that myself, right? Having these wounds, I'm healing myself in offering this to the community.
We will be watching as you unveil this. You said in May, so hopefully we'll be seeing some photos online. This is the good stuff that you guys can all see online. So we'll make sure that we're linking to where Grace is at. How can people, let's say if they are local in your area, where can they find you or engage with you or your artwork? And then also, where can people find you online? We're in Calgary here, but where can people find you to learn more about you or have a conversation, or even maybe bring this exhibit to where they are, which would be amazing.
Yes. Yes, it would be absolutely amazing. Okay, so online, I can be found at healinggracestudio.com. And on Instagram, it would be under Grace G Art, GraceGeeart. I'll also be at the History Colorado Center on April 16th. It's the opening program for the exhibit called Colorado's API Food Culture, Rice and Resilience. API is Asian Pacific Islander. I have a piece there. I'll be doing a short talk, and the exhibit's going to be fantastic.
So that's something that people can join you there in person. That's an in-person. Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Right. And there's also a collective day of healing for the API community on May 7th. And that's where I'm going to have this project that we've been talking about. That's where it's going to get debuted.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So if people are on your website, they'll be able to find more details and directions, if maybe a link to it or something like that.
Sure.
We will find it and we'll put it in the description as well.
Okay.
And just so that people can find you,
Yep.
as well as your website and Instagram, so that they
Then
can
contact me through either one of those is fine. If you're in the area, I'm happy to talk about art, healing, what's coming up. You want to volunteer, you want to be a part of this project, that would be awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It has been so great to reconnect with you, Grace. And I know that our history is varied and fun, and we've done some crazy things. I actually had found a photo at my mom's. I was at my mom's a little while ago and found a photo of when I was 8 months pregnant, and you were sport climbing in the Rocky Mountains here in Canada.
Yeah.
And I was enormous, and I think I had a flower on my belly and I couldn't climb.
And a gray t-shirt.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But that was, and we were, I think, skating. So when my daughter was born and I had the stroller on the ice, and we were seeing the ice bubbles and the fish under the ice. Yes. We have shared so many incredible moments, and the connection that we have had over the years and the heart of the work that you do and our belief in each other. I think when we talk about connection and community, you are such a perfect example of someone in my life that has been there. And this reconnection as you're embarking on you're blooming into all sorts of cool things that are happening in this next year to come. And I cannot wait to see the impact that this is going to make, and that you will have this opportunity to create community engagement and conversations in the years to come. Thank you so much for being with me on the last podcast of our season 1 of The Connector Next Door. What a privilege and a joy to have you here.
Thank you, Lisa. I feel the same way. I have loved and protected our friendship and our connection through the years. And it's just such a pleasure to be with you. Look at where you are. You're doing a podcast and I'm a guest.
Yeah, there you go.
25 years ago, we talked about this. We never would have said this was going to happen.
What's a podcast 25 years ago? Yeah.
That's true.
A website? What? No,
I'm kidding.
Not that bad.
Oh my gosh, we were just figuring out email.
Yes.
25 years ago, right?
I know.
I remember
Incredible.
taking 2 hours to make my first online purchase because I read it and read it and read it.
www. No.
And now we're one click by.
Oh my gosh. And the beauty of all of this is that the message of positivity and connection and all of this gets to spread wider and in such incredible ways. And I love how you're just embracing what's next for you.
Thank you.
We will see you again very soon. And thank you again for being here today.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Bye.
Yay!
The Connector Next Door podcast is produced by Candy Event Consulting, where everyday event planners and their teams gain clarity, get connected, and grow in confidence. Subscribe at www.candyconsulting.ca to hear visits with everyday event planners who are putting connections first.